Right, sir.
Dave Genet.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council. Dave Genet from Crime Watch. I think I just got some good news from Laney, because it didn't sound like good news last week when you voted on the proposed budget for this afternoon's session. Accountability, something we all want, something we all need. And I hope that we're right, that what's going to happen here is going to see that coming our way. You know, we're strong proponents of our police chief. We've heard about Nextdoor and its 30,000 members. Be talking about that on the next item. Here's our police chief asking a question that many of us, and even you, have wanted to know for years. What kind of policing does our citizenry want? There's a survey. They had to shut it down the next day because there were a lot of derogatory comments. We were sad to see that. But we'd still like to see the results of the survey. We'd also like to see the 2014 annual report from the police department that we were refused to receive information from to be ready for the budget hearing for our police department. Ladies and gentlemen, why? Why is the Public Records Act not sacrosanct when it's part of the California State Constitution? Yes, 311 is great. But without accountability back to your customers, what kind of customer service is it? Thank you.
All right, thank you, City Manager.
Okay, Dave Genet.
Well, that was fast. You know, I thought there'd be some discussion on this budget. Oh, well. Nextdoor, we talked about that a little while ago. Now, I've been chastised by my community. I'm a lead, Boulevard Park. Our nearby neighborhoods, there's 4,330 members. They say there's 30,000 members on Nextdoor. Police chief talks about it playing a significant role in our city. We like to think it does. Now, there's the numbers, but you see, I have to be honest with you. I believe in ethics and I believe in transparency. Only 54 people voted on this in the last few days. 54 out of 4,330 in 8 nearby neighborhoods. Yeah, I'm disappointed. You know, I looked at a couple items, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on, but it's about 1996, 1997, ladies and gentlemen. You'll notice a name down here. You could zoom in on that a little bit. You'd see Sergeant Jacqueline Dowden. Back when we had POP and NPOs, and we solved neighborhood problems by working with our police officers, 646 of them. 20 years later, 100,000 more citizens, and we've got 632 police officers. And you wonder why we can't solve neighborhood problems. Chief tries. There's not a man or a woman on our police department that doesn't want to bust their hump to help us. And you come forward with 15 restored police officers after 200 and some odd cut, plus another couple hundred of the civilians that support them. But hey, we got enough money for 18 new or restored park positions.
We need your final thought, please.
Accountability and transparency, do we really have it in Sacramento?
All right. Anything else? We have one speaker. Dave, you're up again.
Public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Problem solving. Last few weeks, we've had an inundation of folks who are less fortunate, have no place to live. We have programs for them. One that's received $18 million since 2011 called Sacramento Steps Forward. I had 2 people come here that were homeless. They haven't been able to get any help. That was, a month ago? They're still trying. They still need housing. These folks are coming out into our communities. I deal with them at night, sometimes 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Here's a solution. We've gone over it with our police officers. We hope to have a conversation with the city attorney, because this is a real solution. There's only one problem, and I experienced it at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, trying to help a neighborhood with this problem. I spoke to our patrol sergeant, but it wasn't our regular sergeant. She was backfilling. Later on that morning, that sergeant had to cover districts 1, 2, and 3 because of shortages. So here's the solution, but it takes a police officer to come out and make sure that this gets served and nobody gets hurt. Do you know that 90% of the time when I ask people to move along, they do? Why? My approach is kind. If they're a veteran, we offer services. But they understand. They can't camp out on Dave's property or Mr. Winger's property or Ace Hardware's property or the Jeremiah property. You see, I'm the agent for all those properties when they're closed at night. So this law can be taken care of. And people kindly moved along the way. But it takes a police officer to make this happen. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Mayor, when there are no units available citywide because they're cleaning up after bars, this can't work. Please, properly staff our police department. Thank you.
Okay. Pro Tem, I mean.
Sure. I just wanted to say, I know we're going to save the balance of discussion on particular items for the individual budgets, so parks or fire police, right? Okay. But I did want to chime in and say that I recognize that savings is important for us on a general fund, but I do think, and actually the first time I realized this was when Councilmember Guerra pointed it out the other week, that I don't think the point of Measure U was to have that bubble at the end that you noticed. You know, you asked the question, what's the spike in the last year Measure U? And it was really, the answer was, it's adding the reserve back in. I do not think that that is what the people were looking for with Measure U. I think they're looking for restoration of services. And I'm interested in what my colleagues think, but I think it's important for us to use that money for its stated purpose, which would be baseline services, particularly emergency services, citywide in every district. And I just wanted to say that's my position and see where the council lies on that as well.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too feel very similar, I think, in that, the voters had voted to fund Measure U, and those funds were designed to restore services, and a couple of things that have not been brought up that are particularly of interest to me, in addition to what Mayor Pro Tem brought up, was that there are several police substations throughout the city, in particular in light of what's going on right now, when some of those police substations can be used as community centers, gathering points, opportunities for the public to interact with our public officials in a way that's non-threatening. I think it's very important for consideration. I'll hold the rest of my comments relative to police substations for tonight. However, I am too, at this particular point, I think in support of us using the money for the intended purposes that the voters approve. So, thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a little bit different point of view about Measure U. I've heard from many of my constituents, and they voted for this tax measure thinking it would sunset in 2019. In fact, that was one of the major sales points to get it passed. And so I believe that they want us to do with this money is be fiscally prudent, and that includes getting ready for the sunset of Measure U. I think we have to keep our eye on that ball the way we spend these funds has to have a fundamental sustainability. And if we spend now on projects that are ongoing expenditures, we will come up very short in 2019 and face a fiscal cliff that will put us back in the position we were at in 2009, which is drastic cuts, layoffs, closing pools, browning out fire stations, all the things that were so painful that we had to take on earlier. So my propensity would certainly be to hold a reserve for the sunset and look for ways to be sustainable, to lower our costs moving forward so that we have a fundamental stability with our budget. Thank you.
All right, anybody else want to weigh in? Council Member Carr.
I wasn't on the council when Measure U passed, but I was a citizen of Sacramento, and I know what the council sold me on, and that was a measure to restore. We had fallen on hard times, and we needed a boost to restore parks, to restore police, to restore fire, to restore the things that have been cut from the recession. And I bought into it. I said, yes, I'll vote for that. And included in the discussions that I heard about Measure U is that when the economy improved, the general fund would be able to take over these issues and would make us, Measure U would make us well until the general fund got well enough for us to take over. And I think that's how you sold it to me. And that's how you sold it to the people who were sitting with me in those discussions. If we renege on that, it's going to be very difficult for us to go back to people and say, hey, the economy didn't improve as well as we thought it was going to improve, and we need to do something different, or we're going to have to cut services. If we don't spend the money like we told people we would spend it, our integrity is at stake as a council. And it's going to be difficult for people to believe anything we say. I think we have some time now to plan for the transition. We have better economic data this year than we had last year, and we'll have better next year than we do this year. But I think we need to spend the vast majority of the money on the things we told people we're going to spend it on. Keep a little bit aside. It's always smart not to invest in programs that have to be sustained, like people, but invest in equipment and other improvements that you would spend one-time funds on. So that's sort of my position. And looking at it from an outsider, when this council passed this measure, you told me you needed it to fill in the gap. And I think we can't do anything else.
All right. Any other comments from anybody? Okay, we have one more speaker, and then maybe there's a motion in store. Go ahead.
Okay, Dave Genet.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving me an opportunity to address this council. I've only been doing it for 21 years as the director of Sacramento's oldest neighborhood watch called Crime Watch. There's only a few people up here that were here when I was here in 1994 when I asked the question, how can our city have the kind of clearance rate that it does with 646 police officers? 646 police officers in 1994. In the last 21 years, ladies and gentlemen, our population has grown by 100,000. And this constant denial of the Public Records Act by the police department back there doesn't want to tell me information that's published every year in the annual report. Read the language here. Here's the paper trail going back to February. My God, what's going on that we can't get data from the police department's annual report in 2014, which in years past has conflicted with what we hear in these council chambers? Where is the police union? I haven't seen them here since Aaron Donato left. on budget workshops and budget issues. We have the finest men and women of the Sacramento Police Department of any city in this state, if not the nation. And they bust their hump going call to call to call to call. Where's the data? Why does a civilian who has to take time away in his twilight years, I just turned 70, moderate income, not rich man, have to go out and hire an attorney and then find out that the watchdog for the Brown Act and the Public Records Act is already retained by you? So if I do find a way to file suit against the city, are the taxpayers going to pay to defend my lawsuit for the public interest that is sacrosanct in this state? How many other law firms do you have off the books?
Dave, we need your final thought, please.
My final thoughts is treat our police officers with the respect they deserve, honor the Brown Act and the California Constitution's Public Records Act.
Thank you.